It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Meche, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Meche, and I'm the guy they call Smoker Broker. Try finding somebody who is a real estate broker and does competitive barbecue. You won't find many of us out there. There's not too many folks that do those types of things, and that is where that name came from. I don't run vape stores. I don't do marijuana or anything like that, but it's funny how many people look at our that name and that logo and sometimes wonder that. We always get a really good kick out of it. But we are always focused on real estate for the most part on this show. This show has become a really good standpoint and a really good starting point for people who are new to the industry, people who are learning how to do real estate. And it's actually a good staple for veteran agents who sometimes want to refresh themselves on certain things, certain advanced topics, which today is kind of going to be one of those because we have two experts on the show in construction that I think anybody can learn from. I don't think it has to be someone who's new. And of course, we always serve the general public. The general public gets a lot out of our particular show as well because we're kind of guiding and helping them with the things that they probably should be looking for. So on new construction, this can be a good show for agents who have clients that are going through the new construction process right now. This is probably nice to be able to send to them saying, hey, look, you should watch this show. This might actually help you during that process. So I love this conversation. You know, we didn't have enough time last week. We never have enough time because we're always, real estate is a continuous conversation. But we had great views. I had about 500 people watch the show last week, and we had several people that sent in messages. Well, it's more than several, but people that came in asking about, can we continue the show and talk about these types of things? So I was like, yeah, we can. And it worked out well because last time I didn't have the two experts I have in the firm on new construction and just because I put together at the last minute. So I was like, that's perfect. This time we can plan it and have them ready to go. So we'll be super informative for you. Y'all in for a treat because I have two guys that know a ton of information about new construction, actually far more than I do. And I love when I have expertise like that on the show because even for me, I get to pay attention and I'll learn a little bit from them. So I think you're really going to like this. This is a good compliment to the show we did last week where we talked about the negotiation side, whereas this time we're going to talk about the problems that can happen in the process itself, what the builder has to go through. So I think it's a really good compliment to the show last week and give you a lot of information. We are also going to continue the end conversation there where we started talking about the negotiation process when you're going from the ground up, where the sticks are put in, all that type of stuff. We really just quickly mentioned that. We didn't spend a lot of time on it, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time as we start the show today. Happy Thursday to you. Hope everybody's doing well, getting moving forward. And, we practice for the most part in the state of Texas. We have people across the country that watch, but the majority of our listening audience is in the state of Texas. The weather's been good for the most part. We had a little hiccup there last week, a little bit of snow. Jim, did you get some snow down there?
Oh, it was amazing.
Isn't that crazy? You don't get snow down in Austin very often, do you?
No, it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's rare. It's
everybody
rare
has
event.
snowmans in their front yards.
Yeah, it's funny when, hell, even Houston had a few snowflakes last week, and that's just very rare for that part of the country. So, but it's kind of hypocritical because what I was going to say is that we've had a very mild winter, and that actually helps the real estate market because it gets people out to show more. I mean, nobody likes to really show in the snow and when it's cold and miserable. So we've had a really mild winter, and that is actually helping fuel a market that probably doesn't need any more fuel on it. So that's been interesting in itself that we're already through mid-January. Typically in the state of Texas, we really, once we get through a mid-February, we're usually pretty done with our winter. So that's that's good for us as far as house selling goes. But that was interesting. We didn't I was probably one of the only areas that didn't see any. We didn't see any snow at all. It was all around us. It's like it came in, it dipped in under Dallas, and my folks out in Fort Worth, just south of Fort Worth, they had like 4 inches, 4 inches snow. And they're not even 60 miles away. So it's amazing where that.
That's about what we got here too.
What's that?
That's what we got here too. Probably
Yeah.
close to 4 inches, and
that's crazy.
And I tried to cancel an appointment, but I had a client that happened to be from the Northeast. He says, "I'm not afraid about that."
I've had that before where we've had a day like that, and which pretty much shuts down Dallas if we have something like that. And I had a client get mad at me one time. He's like, "You're kidding me." I'm like, "Oh, it's not the same, brother." I go, "I used to serve that area in the Northeast." I go, "You guys can have a foot of snow on the ground and the roads are treated. They're not done like that here." I go, "You don't want us to be showing you the properties right now." Even with a glaze of ice or a glaze of an inch of snow causes misery down here. So, yeah, it's funny. I talk so much about, or I'm so entwined with all the barbecue and stuff in the state of Texas. I thought it was awesome to see. I saw Kreutz and Franklin. They both posted pictures with snow outside. These are the barbecue mega capitals of the world, and they got snow on the ground. And that's just something they're not used to seeing out there. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Gary, did you see any snow in New Braunfels? Was there some out there?
It snowed, but it didn't stick. It snowed most of the afternoon, but the ground temperature was about 38, 39. So none of it stuck.
That's
but
just
it was
crazy.
Real pretty to watch it coming down.
Yeah, it's crazy that far south. I mean, it's just so rare. You're talking about a handful of times that snow has hit our Austin, San Antonio, and Houston markets. So it's kind of fun just to watch that go through. But with that said, that was something that was interesting last week. Hearing more and more about, it's funny. This is like a quiet happiness, but I'm seeing more people that I know that are telling me that they have either got their COVID vaccine or that they're in line to get it. Of course, these are my some of my just a little bit older than me friends, because they are. I think they're looking at the 65 and up right now that they've put in line. But I've heard a lot of my friends say that they are in line or they've got the vaccine. And, that's very positive information, because I guess what I'm trying to say is the way this has been produced or assumed was that it was going to take a long time to get this vaccine out, which I think for a lot of people that's true. But there are a lot of people that are starting to say they got it. And the more people that get it, the closer we are to getting back to somewhat of a normalcy. And that's why it's important to me, because I'm starting to be of the opinion that the speed that they're starting to get it out, maybe by mid-year, we do return to some type of normalcy. I mean, I don't know if it's perfect. Well, I know it's not perfect, but I do know that with that many more people vaccinated, it's easier to say that it's not as transmitted as easy as it has been. And maybe some people start becoming a little more relieved. And, you also have to figure at that point, what hurts everybody is helping everybody too, because we've had so many people that have caught the virus over the last couple of months that there are a lot of people out there with antibodies right now. So you have two things that are actually working. And one is the people that have had it are immune. And now you got people that have the vaccine shot. So you have a larger group of people that are a little more comfortable when they're out and about. I don't mind telling everybody, at least at this point now, I hadn't shared it publicly, but we had it. We had it during Christmas. The whole family got it. Now, I want to say it was from one of our kids in one of their events that caused it. But we had it. We were one of the fortunate ones. We were very asymptomatic. I've described it with the kids. I didn't realize I don't even know how you can say they had it. They qualify 100-degree fever for 6 hours. That was their COVID, and that was it. me and Dina had it. I would classify it. We didn't have the same symptoms as a lot of other people. Yeah, it's so different for everybody. I've got friends that have had horrific headaches. They had the fever, the vomiting. Whereas I described ours as a 2-day mono. We're just tired, real tired for 2 days. But after that, it was gone. And look, I've been careful about talking about it publicly and basically saying, that we didn't have a problem with it, because I'm very sympathetic to all the people I know and the friends that I have that have not been so fortunate. I've seen some people talk about, yeah, I got it. It was, no problem. Everybody's worried about it too much. I'm like, yeah, and you're fortunate. There are plenty of people that didn't take that route. Y'all, I got a very good friend. He is like on a thin line right now. I mean, the chances of him making it are probably less than, stellar. And I've had several friends that have passed from it. So I in no way take any joy or excitement in the fact that we handled it okay. It's just, we're very fortunate that it happened that way. But there are too many people that it's affected by. So it's hard when I see people say, oh, it's no big deal. I'm like, yeah, it just depends what big deal is to you, whether you're in a hospital for a month or it just passed you. So we did have it. We went through it. We have the antibodies. They say, it's funny, they tell us it's 3 months. It's 3 months. I'm like, I don't know how y'all can define a 3-month immunity. My personal guess is it's longer than that, if ever. But it's interesting that they say 3 months. But those things all combined, I think, are a positive sign right now. And we've talked about COVID the beginning of every show since March. And the reason why today I think it's more important than it has been, I do believe those two things combined, that the amount of people that have had it and the people that are starting to get the vaccine, including all the frontline workers, which every frontline worker that I know personally has got it, the vaccine. That's got to be a closer step to us getting to where we're like not as concerned for most of the people out there, because we're getting closer to where we think we've solved a problem that's been terrible for us. So, to me, that's a great hope as we start the beginning of this year, because there's no doubt our last year was affected by it. Real estate, not as much. Obviously, the real estate markets thrive. I will tell you one thing from a real estate perspective. I noticed the past week, we're going through, obviously, our year-to-date sales and our numbers, like any group does. And I was surprised when I looked. I go, wow, the numbers are kind of similar to the year before. And I'm sitting here, we're breaking all these records. Well, it didn't hit me until the records really weren't until the 6 months from June to December. Mm-hmm. That's where when I went back and looked at January and February, especially March and April, I'm like, oh, we were behind on these months here.
Deals are being lost because people wanted to see what was going to happen with the COVID, and so they get out of the contract and walk away from their earnest money.
So I want to talk about that. Yeah. I want to talk about that because that's important. So look, I find this conversation really useful for a lot of people right now. And this is besides our new construction conversation we're going to have today. But Jim just mentioned something that I think is really important. So one, yes, March was a very bad month because a lot of deals were lost. I've said it on several shows, that week that the NBA shut, because I always attribute everything when everything started happening, when NBA backed out. I lost $3 million deals that week, just every one of them, bam, bam, bam. So, it's like $120,000 worth of income. Now, my worry wasn't there, even though I'm never thrilled about losing that kind of money. When you have 120 some agents, if it happened to you, it's happening to them. And that did happen. So we have this time frame where January and February were already running low, but then March and April weren't what they were supposed to be. And really, June wasn't what it was supposed to be, because June's where it starts picking back up. But then we get into July, August, September, they all became record months. It's like we're celebrating these record months, and they were records. There's no doubt. We were 3 times our volume every one of those months. But it reminded me, I forgot. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, the first part of the year wasn't that stellar. So it kind of was a high and a low. I was like expecting higher numbers. I'm like, yeah, I got kind of balanced out. So that was something I caught. Now, here, more important to what I was talking about, it's really useful for everybody that's out there. Jim's talking about the contracts that were lost. This is a very important subject that I was told this past week, and I think it'll be helpful. So I have a very prominent accounting firm that does our stuff. One of the best out there. I pay a lot for it too, but I do it because I know the value of accounting. Obviously, I came from that background, and I don't mind paying someone. I know they save me a lot of money on what we do. And one of the things I had not realized yet is it's important for those of you that are looking at PPP loans and the second round of PPP loans. One of the qualifications for the PPP on the second round is that you show loss from 2019 to 2020. And I think a lot of real estate agents, when they heard that, they're like, well, wait a minute, we've had record. I'm like, you had record second half months. You didn't have record first half months. And some of you might be surprised that your volume might not have exceeded the year before, which means you might qualify for that second round of PP. And I didn't realize that. I'm not talking about us in general. I'm just talking about that comment was pushed around, and I had not realized that. Of course, one of the other prominent things on the accounting side is that it looks like the IRS is going to permit what they call double dipping. They're going to allow not only those loans, well, a lot of the ones, especially the ones under like 50,000, they're going to let a lot of those loans be completely forgiven, but they're also going to allow you to deduct the income off of those. So that's which is needed. It is needed, and it's needed greatly for especially some of the small businesses out there. We'll tell you a personal note that annoyed me yesterday. Again, I can say that because it's my podcast, and I have no love for any of the corporations, but I saw where, I'm not going to say it because I don't like ever even documenting anything on air or anything, but let's just say I saw a very prominent retailer who's been in business for many years that did very well. It's kind of one of the craft store ones. I won't say it specifically, that way they can't say anything to me, but they were in the news this week for taking $100 million in PPP and then going bankrupt like 2 weeks later. And I tell you, their CEO came out and he said, look, he goes, it was desperately needed because we couldn't have even operated the closings of those stores without that money. I'm like, great. I go, great. Using the money to close them down when the people who are trying to stay alive. And some of those people just needed 2 million of that. And you took 100 million of it and flushed it down the drain. It's amazing. And I'm not even going to talk that much longer about it because I'm still fearful that that's the evil and the unhidden that we haven't seen yet, is how many of those big companies had that money where they did literally flush it down the toilet and knew they were going bankrupt, or worse, the ones that just desperately didn't need it and they still got it. That, those numbers, they're not disclosed yet, but they're going to find out. And you watch come mid-year, they're going to find out that those people were out there. Now, we could keep talking about that, but I don't want to because I talked longer than I wanted to about the initial COVID. But these were very helpful tips. We talked about takeaways on the show. Those were very helpful. Trust me, for anybody that's in the accounting side of it and how COVID's affecting us right now, that should be very helpful. All right. So we're going to continue our new construction conversation. I love it in the fact that two of my regional partners that do this together with me in the San Antonio and Austin markets are, one, dear friends, and two, they are experts in new construction, actually far more than I have in it, which I love because I love listening as well. So today on my this side, I always go the wrong way. I got Jim McCauley. He's out of Austin. He's our regional director in Austin. Long-time new construction builder, luxury home, regular homes, has built many homes. Long-time realtor, long-time broker, long-time mentor, and everything that you could want in real estate. But expertise truly in new construction. So going to really love hearing from him today. Jim, thanks for being on. Appreciate it. I know you're always busy, so I appreciate you making the time today to talk with us. Then I got my longtime friend and mentor down there, Gary Richey. His background just as varied as Jim's as far as, when it comes to construction. Interestingly enough, and I love the compliments between these two, Gary is far more a commercial builder over the years, although he could build a house if he wanted to, probably has many times, but he has the commercial side of this. So you got two guys with, I dare to say over probably 60 to 70 years of experience in construction. So we're going to talk to them about the back end that we didn't talk about the other day, how the building process can be affected and how simple things to us as the general public might not be so simple from the builder standpoint. So I think you're going to get a lot of that because we had so many people that talked about how much they enjoyed the shows last week. So Gary, thanks. Gary's down in our San Antonio, New Braunfels area. He is our regional director and a regional director for purposes, but basically they're my business partners in those areas, and they run the same thing that I do in Dallas, Fort Worth. So I love it when they can be on the show and have the expertise that we need for the certain topics that we have. And honestly, we just probably don't have them on enough, which is something that we're going to try this year to do. So thank you, Gary, for making your time as well. In fact, I see you in the classroom in there, so you're probably taking some breaks in there to try to get some time in to help us out. So you're doing some
I snuck into Jim's backyard. I'm sitting in one of the classrooms at the Champions in Austin, and
I
said, in Texas, if you build it, they will come.
Well,
kind of stealing a tagline.
That's a lot of truth, and that's kind of what we're talking about today, because new construction became one of the first topics for the show this year, because obviously with the thin market, with a short inventory, especially, God forbid, down in Austin, new construction is somewhere where a lot of people are looking, because even though there's not a lot of specs on the ground that are ready, a lot of those builders are producing homes that can be purchased right now, that at least it's a guarantee that someone will have a home to live in 3 to 6 months. So new construction is at an all-time importance level right now in the state of Texas. I love it. If you build it, they will come. You better damn well believe that. You don't have to put an if in front of it. You can just put if you build it, they will be there. It's a fact. They're going to be there for sure. It's not a matter of if or when. They're going to do it. All right, let's.
One of my local builders in New Braunfels has several different lots, and he just got some guys out there to trim up the trees and move some dirt around and so forth and so on. And he got 15 phone calls in a week saying, "Are you starting this build on this lot here, Bumble? We drove by and saw it. We heard a friend, this, that." And Jim, oh my gosh, in your market, it's crazy.
Well, now, Jim, here's the thing about Jim. If he's doing mid-range, he'd have probably 1,000 calls. He's already getting those calls with the luxury. Jim, is that right?
Yeah, it's amazing. Even lots that people overlook and are less desirable, they are just going at high prices. It's crazy out there right now.
Well, and for the one time in my career, I've always been very fortunate that I felt I had a good pulse on what the market can do and what it will do. This is the first time in my career. I'm just not so sure where this pans out. I know it's good. I know we're doing well, and I know we're going to continue to do well. But I have to admit, I'm just a tad nervous about this inventory shortage, because if the pressure keeps on, at what point do we get to where we can't put someone in a home, like legitimately, that needs to be in one? And that's a very accurate fear right now that some are actually experiencing. But more so, does it just continue? Does the pressure get on? And I've mentioned this on a couple shows too, and it doesn't affect the new construction as much as it does the investment side, but I think they're all tied together. The investors out there right now, especially the big, deep pocket investors, the ones that are in markets where there's only 3 or 4 of them, and they have like millions of dollars because they pooled together and they're buying up all this property. And anybody else who doesn't have a lot of money really doesn't have a chance because they don't have cash. They're not going to win a bid against these people. I really think we're not very far away from government intervention, where those guys come in and they start saying, you can't buy those homes. There are people that need to own or occupy those, and you're not giving them the chance because of your competitive advantage. And I've got a feeling they might put a stop to that. HUD tried to do it a few years back where they initiated that owner-occupant rule, where they said on HUD, if you're going to buy HUD, you have to live in it for a year, because they started seeing that. They're like, hey, but this program was created for people who are struggling to get in the home, and we want to get them in. And then they find out that people with tons of money are buying them and then renting them to those people. So they put those programs in place. I don't think you're very far off from seeing a possible limit as to how many they let buy. I might be crazy right now, but a lot of times I'm actually right on that stuff. And someone's going to say something sooner or later about those auctions where the same people buy those homes, and the same person is buying all the homes out there, and then either selling them at a profit or they're keeping the people that need to live in them. But we're not far away from that, y'all. So that's an interesting conversation too. And again, it fuels new construction, because that's usually the one area that the investors don't touch. That's another good part takeaway from the show today, is that one of the many good things about new construction is that you're not going to have investors really digging in there, because they know that they're paying a higher amount than they probably want to pay. Although, even with that said, I have seen some new investors actually get to the point where the inventory is so short, they buy those so they can have that asset too, which that's not good for anybody. At least right now, it's not. Well, it's good for the builder, but it's not good for the housing market and the general public. So all that stuff is out there. Let's start talking about just a general conversation. I said I was going to start talking about the finished part of the negotiations when you build from the stick up. But I'd rather talk more about the process, the building process itself with you two. So Jim, I want us to start with how do you think right now with the builders in the markets, are they being delayed because of the demand, or is it just a matter of, is it a material issue, or is it both? What are you seeing out there?
It is both. And right now, appliances, for example, we're closing houses without appliances.
Out of what? Without appliances? Wow.
Lumber, as you know, has been so volatile and so high, particularly with the smaller builders. They're actually putting in their contract, even though they're giving the client a fixed price, they're actually now putting in the contract that the lumber is only an allowance. And
wow.
if it goes over that, they owe it. If it goes under, we'll credit it back.
So look, y'all, I'm going to stop him right now, and because that point he just made so overwhelming. Y'all, it's rare that I hear something that I don't know from an experience level and a current market level. I had not heard that, and y'all, if someone like me who's is eyes deep in this 24/7 is just hearing that takeaway from the show today, listen to what he said. Houses being closed on where the appliances aren't even in yet. They're so desperate to close on them. They want to get them closed, and they're just like, well, look, we'll get those in there. I promise you that. And then you're getting to where we've known lumber's been an issue for a long time. Lumber's been sky high for the longest time. But now they're getting to where they're putting an allowance in there for it. This is unheard of.
Had a lumber package on a deal we're about to start that jumped up like $35,000, and
wow.
people kind of had to back up and table, and we're sitting there hoping that it's going to ride down. I'm telling you, that's not going to happen for a while.
Gary, so you're different. You're not so much the residential, although I know you have all the residential information, and I know on the commercial side, a lot of time we deal with metal, iron, and steel, but you've recently done a pretty big project with lumber itself. And are you seeing some things like that?
Absolutely. And, it's not only lumber, it's also all of the other primary, components that you need to build a structure. Jim can confirm this too. I, in commercial, do both steel frame construction and lumber, and sometimes a combination. And I found that typically we use lumber in the past as recently as 18 to 24 months ago, because it was a less expensive alternative to steel. That's no longer the case. And now steel has gotten just outrageous. And here's the big thing. It's like Jim was saying, you can bid a package whenever you do a budget on a particular new build, but the prices are so volatile based on availability that you're going to end up paying anywhere from 15 to 20% more by the time you get it there on site.
God, that's
it's just sheetrock has gone up 50% in the last 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
what I used to pay for a piece of sheetrock
is there anything
double.
that hasn't gone up? I mean, are there anything that you guys built with that's not gone up?
But hardly anything.
No.
How about you, Jim?
No.
Carpet. I got a carpet bid last week on a project. Almost fell out of my chair. So
Funny you said that. We just did a remodel at the house where, they. I like to think I know what carpet should cost. I've been doing it for a long enough time. I know my residential quotes, right? So in my own home, you would think I know what's coming. So I just went ahead and told Dina, I go, whatever it is, go ahead and take care of it. So she comes back, and it's for the game room. Actually, not for the game room. This was for the, let's see, 1, 2. This was for 4 bedrooms, and we went to I was tired of, we had a real not comfortable carpet, and it was time to redo it. So I just basically told her, I go for it, 4 rooms, no big deal. The hardwood, the main structures that we have are all hardwood. So I'm like, that shouldn't cost so much. I go ahead and do it. I don't need to see it. The invoice comes back at like $13,000 for 4 bedrooms for carpet. You're talking about falling out of your chair.
Yeah.
I wanted to yell at her because I'm like, how? But then I'm like, well, you're the one who told her to do it. And I was just oblivious, to. You're right. It actually went out of the chair for me. I think I shook my head for an hour. I thought, I had a, well, I shouldn't say that, but I just spent the entire time, and I just couldn't get past it. So I personally seen that as well. It makes me fearful of, we're growing all these suburbs. Austin, it's funny, we're looking at the triangle of Austin, San Antonio, and Houston when you could put DFW at the top of it. But it's of no surprise. You guys know this, and I think it's important for y'all's business models as well. We're looking at a triangle of that triangle between Austin, San Antonio, and Houston that I think is going to overlap at some point, and you're going to have suburb areas that get confused. Are they a suburb of Houston? Are they a suburb of Austin? Are they a suburb? It's like the old. It's like, I think you're going to have an overlap of suburbs. I think we're going to experience that in the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's coming. Actually, you want my real advice for anybody who's taking it away? Any land that is reasonable cost in that triangle, which it probably isn't, but if it is, you might want to get in on that, because it's only a matter of, Jim, if those developers don't have that property in that middle part, and look, y'all, I'm talking about where we're an hour and 20 minutes out. If you get to the middle of the triangle, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, I think if you get to the middle of that spot, you're usually an hour to an hour and a half outside of each of those metroplexes, which most people would say that's too far. And you're in the sticks, and you are in the sticks. Once you get Lockhart's in the sticks, once you get past Lockhart, you really get in the sticks. I really think at some point those become massive suburbs. If I'm a builder, a developer, I would think that I'm buying a lot of property in that mid area out there. Well, we're seeing it in and this is more close to home to Gary, the expansion from Bernie out to Fredericksburg.
Oh, unbelievable!
That's crazy. Well, Jim, you too. Outside from Lakeway, you're seeing
Marble Falls.
Marble Falls, right? Dripping Springs, right?
Big circle there back to Johnson City, and then Fredericksburg, and it's crazy.
And look, listen, for anybody that's out there that's not familiar with what we're talking about, y'all, they're talking about some really rural areas. They're talking about some really rural areas that are really starting to gear up with massive amounts of development. This is something 15 years ago none of us would have, even thought of. I mean, for native Texans, the hill country has been always, truly wanted hunting land, deer. I mean, this is the deer capital of the world, with out in the Llano area and further into South Texas. And, we're starting to push to where residential development might be in those areas. So it's amazing how we eventually come to terms with what does not only our state, our country, and the world, how do we continue to expand the populations to where we're still within a reasonable amount of distance from places that serve those areas. This is something in our lifetimes we will see, that we're going to be a part of. And it's interesting to think what 100 years from now looks like. I'm sure that they always say that, but really, if you look at it now, the theory about the triangle, that's not just here. That theory is also on the East Coast, where you have New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC, and Boston, all fairly close to each other. They already kind of overlap. I mean, Philadelphia and the Baltimore markets, they actually overlap. You have people that commute between back and forth in those cities. You're going to see this more in areas like the Destin, Panama City, Tampa and Orlando. Tampa and Orlando have already formed an overlap. And it's interesting to see how the commercial real estate involves there. We have such a worry right now about commercial real estate and the companies that are vacating or downsizing, and the businesses that are leaving because they've just gone out of business. And there's a big worry that commercial real estate is in trouble. But I think what you're going to find is it's going to thrive in another year or two with the amount of space that's available, and in certain areas, people are going to get creative.
Can I make a comment about that, Robert?
Please, yeah.
What my personal experience has been, and I've got a long history of residential as well as commercial building. I did commercial simply out of a friend of mine wanted to build their own office building a few years back, and then I got hooked and seduced by the dark side of the force. So
just when I thought I was out, they
jerked me back in. A friend of mine who's in commercial development, we have been trying to do a closed local investor joint venture for about 2.5 years. And we're having problems finding the land to do what we want to do. And we're looking as far as 15, 20 miles outside of any sort of incorporated city area, which is, people say, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, because if you don't buy it now, you're not going to get to, right, Jim? I mean, you're probably experiencing this in residential too. And what's happening is that the cost of the land, these people in Texas, for some reason, they talk to each other a lot, and they're not exactly dumb. Neighbors have conversations at the local tractor supply. Yeah, did you hear Fred Brown just sold his farm for dang near $5 a square foot? I'm going to ask $6.50.
What's that, Jim?
They're quicker than the internet.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's the underground network. That's what I call that.
Yeah.
The underground network. And you're right. They're quicker than the internet. Word travels fast. And so that is a good point to make. And I'm going to tie it into this triangle that we keep talking about. Gary's looking at 10 to 20 miles because obviously for their business model, it's important to be as close as they can. But the only natural response to when you can't find it inside the 10 to 20 minute radius is you go further out. Right. And when you start seeing bigger businesses go further out, you see people that follow. Dallas-Fort Worth is a great example. North of the Dallas-Fort Worth area in the Sanger area, which for those of you that are not around, that's about an hour north of Dallas-Fort Worth, okay, which would be considered rural. In fact, it's almost on the Oklahoma state line. Walmart has one of its largest distribution centers there. Now, y'all, that's the middle of nowhere for a lot of people. But just as savvy as Walmart is all the time. They know that they need that area. They have to be somewhat in proximity to Dallas-Fort Worth, but they also know that those northern suburbs have a lot of land that are cheaper than, of course, inside, like Gary was talking about, that 10 to 20 mile radius. So this is another reason why you start seeing this. And y'all, which I love doing the podcast because so much comes out of it. Even for me, when I'm just talking, and it makes me think more. We're talking about Austin with all these companies that are pushing through. We've been talking about Tesla moving in, and I think Oracle's talking about.
Oracle,
yeah, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
If the Silicon Valley is now making the real valley their central hubs, that you're going to see massive growth and new construction flies off the hooks. And this isn't tomorrow, but the tracks are being laid right now. So it's funny. I love that you guys are practicing in what I consider the triangle right now, because mark my words, I think you guys are really going to start seeing some activity in that tri area in the middle where nothing is there right now. I think you're really going to start seeing some movement that you might not have ever seen. Jim, even for you and the guys that you work with sometimes, if it's me, I'm putting in somebody's ear, hey, we ought to go look at some land over there. I mean, how much longer is it before we have, well, I'm sure they already have in the middle there, some type of Buc-ee's or something, gas centers, but those areas start to expand when more people start living out there. What's the far west suburb of Austin that's outside past the airport? Where do we get to when we start? It's north of Lockhart. Is there any major?
Manville?
You're
talking about Manville.
Yeah. Those areas out there, they start becoming more valuable. And southeast there, those areas start becoming more valuable. You've got the what's that runner road? The I-30 one, the one that's like a Autobahn.
130.
130,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, 130.
I always remember just because
the speed limit's supposed to be 80, but everybody goes 95.
It scares the shit out of me.
I do at least 100. So.
It scares me. It scares me personally when I drive it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do if there's a bump or something. I don't know if I've got a parachute to stop this car. So it's funny that you say that, but you put that there. The 130 loop was put out there because the traffic in Austin was so awful. But now you got a lot of vacant land where that thing strips through and it takes you into Lockhart. Everything east of there starts expanding, and when you start expanding that way, you start nudging into the Houston area, because it's really not that far. So just some fascinating conversations. All right, I want to talk about when we're actually building in the residential arena. You guys talk to me. Jim, start, and then Gary can continue and add on. What are the major problems that a builder worries about when they start building these homes? What are their concerns? They already have the plan in place. They know what they're supposed to build, but they also know they have a client waiting. Now, the reason why this can be a big takeaway for anybody that's watching and that watches on archive is that some builders are running behind right now, and and we're seeing a lot of, hey, we're supposed to close in February, but now we're going to close in March or April, and that's not normal. So I want you to talk about what causes that.
Well, obviously, everything that we were talking about earlier, supplies and material, labor. I mean, that's awful. The labor can really be terrible, and it's gotten to where a lot of builders are not putting in closing times. They will not commit to a closing time.
All right, so that's a takeaway for everybody out there right now. That's a change. That it's long been assumed that the builder in the contract puts a date. Now it's always known that the builder has outs there where they know because of weather that it might be off by a month or so. But now we have builders that are just flat out saying, "Oh, we'll go under contract, but we're not." And I have to tell you,
they'll walk away.
Yeah, as hard as that makes my life, I agree with them. That's pretty smart, because there's no way a builder right now can say, "Oh, it'll be done in 6 months from now." I promise you. With what they're doing, I just don't see it. So that's a good takeaway from anybody. You need to start being prepared that a builder might actually tell you, "Well, we're not committing to a date." That would be something that's very new, especially for our crew. They're not trained on that. So that's a great takeaway. This show's all about takeaways. even if you get 1 or 2 takeaways, most of them should get at least 5 takeaways from our show because that's what we shoot for. That's a good one for today. I like that. What else? What are some other problems? Or Gary, you want to jump in? What do you think?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to address too is, along that same vein, is whenever you do, and I'm looking at it from a residential sales associate side, when you do go into a new builder model and talk to the builder rep, talk to the builders, and of course, everybody's wondering, well, when can we move in? When can we move in? So forth, so on. And you get a on-site rep who has been coached and basically threatened to, within an inch of their life, do not commit to, well, we'll be done in 6 months or, 180 days or whatever. Don't give those people a number. You need to prepare your client for that conversation so that they're not shocked whenever they walk into a new build. And like Jim says, they can't really afford to give them a hard closing time or completion date based on availability of materials, labor, and it's really bad in residential. I mean, and I'll be real honest with you, most of my commercial contractors were residential contractors, but commercial was paying them virtually twice as much money. So they quit building and framing houses and came over to the commercial dark side of the force and left all of the residential builders kind of high and dry, scrambling for, and maybe Jim has experienced this too, skilled labor, people that really know what they're doing.
I'm just shaking my head right now. I mean, even for me, for takeaways on that's incredible that we are at that point. That would be something I'd have been completely oblivious to before this call. Jim, what were you saying?
Well, back when we had the crash in 2008, everybody started changing their career, started getting out of plumbing, got out of electricity, got out of framing, got out of all that stuff, and actually did career changes. And then all of a sudden, now we turn around with this big boom, and we have a shortage of that skilled labor, and that's right now they can make great money.
So look, I want to talk about that, and I find that surprising too when those guys do that, because the one thing is real estate, that those jobs flow with us too. Real estate's cyclical. It always has been. There are downs and ups, and yes, we have been on one of the ultimate high and ups for the longest time. This is the longest I think we've ever gone where we haven't had a down market, and we don't see anything in sight really changing that. So that's something that is that's new to us, but it's amazing those people that do back out of those careers and at least don't keep it on the side, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, I get that you have to make money and during down times, but the fact that you don't just keep it going, and I'll make another comment for outside of just our conversations, because this show is geared towards business as well. It's not just real estate. We talk about business as well and entrepreneurship. I tell you, if I had in my next life, in the third life, in the fourth life, if anybody believes you have extra lives, I wish I would come back as a combo of some type of, business management skill, but with knowledge in AC, mechanical cars, plumbing, those trades, welding. Those welders make a lot of money. Be surprised how much a good welder makes. Those are good trades that people ignore a lot, and it's amazing to me how many people I see, how many friends I actually have that struggle with their jobs or their careers, or they just have never found something. I'm like, if I was in that position, I'd go to one of those trade schools and I'd learn that, and I don't think you'd have that much problems about making your bill and your monthly payments, because those guys make a lot of money. Plumbers, hell, the house cleaners, they make a lot of money.
Anybody.
The
welder that built the handmade, custom handrails for me in one of my projects, the one I'm sitting in right now, he shared with me kind of like on the side that I said, well, how come you only just have one helper and he's skilled as heck? You could tell the guy knew what he's doing. He says, because I have to pay him $35 an hour. And this was 2 years ago. And I'm going, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. He said, nope. And that's not while he's just on the job. That's from the time he leaves his house, comes to my shop, goes to the job. So I said, so you're paying him to come to work? And he says, absolutely, or else he'll go someplace else that will.
Yeah, one of the plumbers the other day that we were working in, they pulled that shit on me too. They were like, there was a part they needed, and it was a part that they failed to recognize the last time. So the guy goes out, he comes back 2 hours later, and they billed me for it. I'm like, like, I'm not paying for this guy driving around aimlessly because of something he forgot. And I had to fight for it. They took it off, but it's because of what you said. They had to pay him. They had to pay him for that amount of time, and it probably wasn't cheap because it was a Saturday.
Another very important when you're going in to see a new builder, whether it be custom or production, whatever, I think that is, what is their warranty program?
All right, so look, we have a few minutes left. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the warranty problem. Now, another reason why I love you bringing that's going to be a great way to end the show too. There was something on a good national article came out on questions that are really important to new builds. And I'm going to tell y'all, again, just to show you how much information is in this topic, the next show, I'm not going to do it next week because I don't like going 3 shows with the same topic, but there are 15 questions that they advise you to ask a builder. And they were really good. A lot of times I read through these articles, I'm like, yeah, whatever. One of them, and I'm looking for it, Jim. It says, what is the warranty on the home? What is the procedure for warranty claims? How quick are repairs made? So I love you talk about that. That is, for those of you, that is a current event right now that for you're trying to get another takeaway, there's another one. Listen to what he says about what you should ask a builder when it comes to that warranty. Jim, tell him about it.
Here's something else, and I do this because I represent 3 builders that have a great warranty program, and I use it against other builders. But the biggest thing is what is their warranty? Is it a 1 year? Do they have a 10-year structural? And then most importantly, who's backing that up? Because there are a lot of times a builder can go out and the home building companies have a contract where it's all where you're giving your client a 10-year warranty and you're going to do this 1 year warranty with them, which you have to by law anyway. You don't have to give them a 10-year anymore. You just have to give them a 1 year. But the bottom line is that all just on paper based on that builder? He's going to have the money to fix it if something really goes wrong. Or if something happens to that builder, is there a third party backing up that warranty?
That's a major takeaway, and I really want to focus that in our last couple of minutes. That's one of the most important pieces. Is the builder financially worthy? Have they been doing this a long time? Because if they offer a warranty where they're the only ones that are backing that warranty and they go bankrupt the next year, you've got a major problem on your hands. Most builders these days do contract through a third party, so it's paid for up front. Well, you're really paying for it, but it's a third party agreement to where even if the builder doesn't exist, those warranties are still in place. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that they knew that, because that
you need to ask, do they have a structural warranty? Because I've had people come to me and they went through the whole construction process. They're at the closing table and they find out they don't have a 10-year structal warranty, and no one told them that.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's critical in Texas.
Absolutely. I mean, look, Texas is a hard soil state. In a lot of areas, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And if you don't know what and look, another takeaway for the show, a lot of takeaways in the last few minutes here. Another takeaway, that stuff about you being a real estate agent, you better have some knowledge about that. You better not just sit there and say, well, that's the builder. That's one of the cardinal sins in working with a new builder, is that you get so comfortable that the builder's doing a lot of this that you just sit back. Let me tell you, if there's something that you should have had knowledge on about that builder and you didn't tell that buyer, they'll come after you. They'll come after you for being incompetent and not representing them to the fullest, because in all reality, that is what happened. You were incompetent and you didn't represent them to the fullest. You should know the downfalls of those contracts. And look, I think that's going to be a good way to end this conversation today. and set up the next one we're going to have in a few weeks on this list of questions that you should ask, because there are questions. The goal today was to talk about some of the problems that we see in new construction. And I thought Gary and Jim just did an outstanding job. It'd be so much greater. It'd be so great if we could just spend hours with them. And we're going to try to do that more throughout the year, because the little bit of time is valuable. But the next one we're going to focus in on, we're going to look at the questions that you should be asking, because the way Jim did that, he's basically warning you that he knows that can be an issue, and he knows that there are multiple other issues behind that he doesn't have time to talk about today, and it's going to be in these questions. So that's a show that I think I'm going to really look forward to, because I think it's going to bring everything together that we've been talking about, but it's going to be more blunt as to, from a real estate agent standpoint, you better damn well have gone through these steps so that you can make sure that if anything goes wrong, you're like, hey, we did that. I did this, this, and this, and I made sure this happened. I think that's going to be helpful now. And I definitely will have Jim and Gary on for that. I'm going to make a real effort for any type of construction to always have them on, and have them on for just general conversations as well when it comes to real estate, because they're much more than just new construction. In fact, they're far from just more from new construction. I want to thank everybody out there for watching. Like I said, we continually have great views on the show. Well, last week we crossed 500. It's not unreasonable for us to cross 500. Sometimes we reach a 700 to 1,000 viewers. Now, the reason why I like that is a lot of podcasts they come up with these gaudy numbers that they had 10,000 people watch, 20,000 people watch. A lot of those views are in passing. Someone just passed the show. I can assure you the majority of the people that watch this particular podcast, they are watching it for the material, and they watch it through. They're not glancing it. And we know that because we get that feedback from tons of people throughout the week where they said, hey, I watched your show on this or that. And I find that to be meaningful for what it is that we do, because the show does have a lot of information that's extremely helpful. And I say it all the time. I mean, probably every 3 shows that I'm biased towards the podcast because it's mine. But in all honesty, the information that comes out of it is extremely valuable for someone who's purchasing a home, selling a home, dealing with a real estate agent, or being a real estate agent. I mean, I've watched real estate podcasts before, and they go off on tangents about stuff that really doesn't affect real estate. We're trying to protect and make sure you do it the right way. So I love the views. I cannot encourage you enough to keep on pushing the show out to other people. Encourage them to watch your clients too, because believe me, this show can help. When you have a difficult client, this show can help ease that process. So again, I can't thank everybody enough for constantly watching. We will be back next week. I haven't chosen the topic yet. We're going to go opposite new construction since we did it for 2 weeks, but rest assured in the next month or two, we're going to come back to these new construction questions. Y'all have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks.